Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we need to have a bit of an intervention. I'm looking at myself in the mirror here, too. We need to stop treating the database like it's a magic black box. You know the drill. You write an application, you throw some SQL at it, and it just works. Until it doesn't.
That is the classic trajectory.
Yeah.
It works fine when you have, say, 100 users and a few thousand rows, but then you hit scale, and suddenly that black box starts acting very erratic.
Exactly. I've been there. The site slows down, so I add an index. It gets a little faster. Then it slows down again, so I add more hardware. It feels like I'm guessing. I'm debugging by coincidence rather than engineering. So today, I want to rip the lid off the box. I've got my stack of notes here on MySQL, specifically the InnoDB engine. And the goal is to stop thinking about syntax and start thinking about, what did you call it? Physics.
Physics. First principles. If you want to understand why your database is slow, you have to stop looking at the code and start looking at the hardware. You have to understand how memory actually works, how a physical disk arm moves, and the massive cost of asking the computer to write data.
We're going to get into the weeds today. We're talking about the buffer pool, the mechanics of disk I/O, and this thing called the change buffer, which, honestly, until I did this reading, I didn't even know was running in the background.
The change buffer is the hidden hero of the database, but it's also a bit of a double-edged sword. To understand it, though, we have to start with the basics. We have to look at the thing every mid-level engineer thinks they have mastered. Indexes.
I feel attacked already. My strategy has always been, if the query is slow, put an index on the column in the where clause. It's basically muscle memory.
It is a common reflex.
Yeah.
But let's look at what an index actually is physically. Imagine your database table is a massive textbook. The data itself, the actual rows, is organized by the primary key. That's your clustered index. It's like the page numbers. If I tell you to find page 50, you know exactly where it is relative to page 49.
Right. It's physically sorted on the disk that way?
Correct. But now you want to search for something else, say a user's email address. If you don't have an index, you have to start at page 1 and read every single line of the book until you find john@example.com.
The dreaded full table scan.
Exactly. So you create a secondary index. This is like the index at the back of the textbook. It's a separate list, sorted alphabetically by email. You look up the email, it gives you a page number, or in database terms, the primary key ID, and then you flip to that page to get the data.
Okay, so far, this justifies my index everything strategy. I'm avoiding the full table scan. I'm making reads faster.
You are making reads faster, but you are ignoring the cost.
Yeah.
You aren't just reading the book, you're writing it. Every time you insert a new row into that table, what happens?
I write the data to the table, and
I have to update the index at the back of the
well,
book.
you'd have to update every index at the back of the book. If you have a table with 5 secondary indexes and you insert one row, you are effectively performing 6 write operations.
6.
6. 1 for the clustered index and 5 for the secondary B trees. We call this write amplification.
So if I have 20 indexes on a table, which I have definitely seen in legacy code bases, I'm amplifying my write load by 20 times.
Yes. You are hammering your storage. I've seen production databases where the indexes took up more disk space than the actual data.
Wow.
You're dealing with index bloat. You're slowing down every single insert, update, and delete to maintain lists that you might not even be using.
And that's the kicker, right? Just because the index exists doesn't mean the database uses it.
Exactly. If you haven't run Analyze Table recently, the database statistics might be stale. The query planner looks at your index, thinks this looks empty, and decides to do a full table scan anyway. So you're paying the write penalty, consuming the disk space, and getting 0 read performance benefit.
It's a bad deal.
It feels like a direct application of the CIP theorem, doesn't it? We're trading something here.
It is. In a distributed system, you trade availability for consistency. Here, you are trading write throughput for read throughput. Indexes are biased towards reading. If you are building a write-heavy system like a logging pipeline, those indexes are actively fighting against you.
So the takeaway is indexes aren't free, they're a tax on writes.
Precisely.
Okay, so that's the structure of the data. Now let's talk about where this data lives while we're actually processing it. Because we aren't always reading directly from the hard drive. We have RAM.
We do. And this brings us to the buffer pool. To understand why this exists, we need another analogy. I want you to imagine your office. You have your desk, and you have a filing cabinet on the other side of the building.
Okay. The desk is RAM.
The desk is RAM. It's fast, it's right in front of you, but it's small. The filing cabinet is your hard disk. It's huge, it holds everything, but it is agonizingly slow to walk there.
How slow are we talking?
In computer terms, the difference between reading from RAM and reading from disk is about 10,000 to 1. If grabbing a paper from your desk takes 1 second, walking to the filing cabinet takes about 3 hours.
Wow. Okay, when you put it that way, the goal of database engineering is basically never go to the filing cabinet.
That is the goal. That is the buffer pool. It's a chunk of memory, usually 80% of your available RAM, where InnoDB caches pages of data it's working on. A page is just a 16 KB slice of your database. When you run a query, the engine checks the disk first. If the page is there, cache hit, it returns instantly.
And if it's not?
Cache miss. The engine has to walk to the filing cabinet, find the page, bring it back to the desk, and then read it.
But the disk isn't infinite. Eventually, it gets covered in papers.
All right, so you need an eviction policy.
Yeah.
InnoDB uses LRU, least recently used. It'll look to the desk, finds the paper you haven't touched in the longest time, and dumps it. If you've written notes on that paper, changed the data, it's a dirty page. You have to walk it back to the cabinet and file it before you can clear the space.
This sounds efficient, but I can see where it breaks. What happens if my working set, the data I need just to run the app right now, is bigger than the desk?
Then you are in trouble. We call that thrashing. You spend all your time walking back and forth to the cabinet, swapping papers. You bring one in, read it, throw it out to make room for the next one, and then immediately need the first one again.
Right.
Your CPU usage might look fine, but your throughput goes to 0 because you're waiting on physics.
This also explains why restarting a database is so painful. I've had incidents where we reboot and the site is slow for 20 minutes.
That's the cold start problem. Your desk is clean. Every single request is a cache miss. You have to wait for the buffer pool to warm up and fill with hot data. In production, you really should configure in a buffer pool dump hash shutdown. It basically takes a photo of your desk before you leave and restores it when you come back, so you don't start from 0.
There's another bottleneck here, though, right? Even if the data is in memory, can everyone access it at once?
No. And this is a subtle one that bites a lot of engineers. It's called latch contention. Imagine you have that one hot piece of data on your desk, and 20 people threads all want to read it at the exact same time.
They can't all grab the paper at once.
Right. You need a lock or a latch to ensure consistency. So you end up with threads queuing up just to look at the data that is already in memory. You'll see your CPU spiking, but the database isn't doing any real work. It's just fighting over who gets to hold the paper.
So memory isn't magic. It has its own congestion problems.
Exactly. But eventually, we have to leave the desk. We have to write to the filing cabinet, and this is where the mechanics of the hard drive become the absolute villain of the story. We need to distinguish between sequential I/O and random I/O.
I remember this from CS 101, but let's apply it here. Sequential is reading the book page by page.
Yes. You read page 1, then page 2. The disk head, the physical needle glides along the platter. It's fast.
And random I/O?
Random I/O is using a dictionary. You look up a word on page 5, then page 800, then page 22. You are constantly flipping back and forth.
And on a spinning hard drive, that flipping is the disk head physically moving to a new track.
Yes. That's seek time. It takes about 5 to 10 milliseconds. That sounds fast, but if you have to do it 5,000 times a second, the drive physically cannot keep up. It's the difference between driving 100 miles on a highway versus driving 100 miles in a city with a stop sign every 10 feet.
Does this still matter with SSDs? I feel like everyone says, just use an SSD, random I/O is free.
It is definitely not free. SSDs are faster, yes, but they still have overhead. And more importantly, random writes on an SSD cause massive write amplification at the hardware level. You wear out the drive significantly faster with random writes than with sequential ones.
So bringing this back to our indexes. If I insert 1,000 rows and I have 5 secondary indexes.
Those indexes are sorted alphabetically, right? So your new users are going to be scattered all over the B tree. One is on page 5, one is on page 5,000. It is the definition of random I/O.
So if I try to insert those 1,000 rows, I'm triggering 5,000 random seeks on the disk?
Correct. And if you did that directly, your database would crawl. You'd be I/O bound.
So how does InnoDB survive? How do we ingest data fast if the disk is so slow?
We cheat. Well, we buffer. This is where we meet the change buffer.
This was the part of the notes that really blew my mind. I love the analogy here. The teacher grading papers.
It fits perfectly. Imagine you are a teacher. You have a stack of 100 exams to grade. For each exam, you have to update 3 things: the grade book, the attendance sheet, and the student's permanent file.
The random I/O way, the naive way, is to grade one paper, walk all the way to the filing cabinet, pull the 3 folders, update them, put them back, walk back to the desk, and repeat.
You'd be walking all day. You'd get nothing done.
So what does the change buffer do?
The change buffer changes the workflow. You date your desk, you grade all 100 papers. When you need to update a file that isn't on your desk, one of those cold index pages in the cabinet, you don't go get it. You just write a sticky note.
Update John's attendance to present.
Exactly. You put that sticky note in a special pile on your desk. You defer the physical work.
So the actual file in the cabinet is technically out of date?
Yes. But the system knows about the change. Then, later on, maybe when you're taking a coffee break or when the system is idle, you take that stack of sticky notes, you walk to the cabinet once, and you update the attendance folder with 50 changes at the same time.
You turned 50 random trips into one sequential trip.
That is the magic. You converted random I/O into sequential I/O. In technical terms, when you modify a secondary index page that is not in the buffer pool, InnoDB writes the change to the change buffer in memory. It doesn't fetch the page from disk.
And then it merges them later.
Yes. There's a background thread that merges these changes into the disk pages during idle time. Or, if a user runs a query that actually needs that specific page, the system forces a merge right then.
That sounds incredibly smart, but I'm looking at the reality check section here, and it looks pretty grim. There's a catch.
There's always a catch. The catch is debt. You're borrowing speed now by promising to do the work later.
Technical debt in the literal sense.
Exactly. One major risk is overflow. The change buffer lives inside the buffer pool. It shares that memory.
Yeah.
If you have a massive write spike, say Black Friday traffic, and you are generating sticky notes faster than the background thread can file them,
The pile gets too big.
the system panics. It forces synchronous flushing. It stops deferring. It blocks your incoming writes until it can clear space.
So my application latency goes from 20 milliseconds to 2 seconds.
Or worse, the system effectively stalls.
And what about the crash scenario? This is the one that scares me. If the power goes out and I have 10,000 sticky notes in RAM that haven't been filed yet,
That is the recovery nightmare. The database is durable. It writes these changes to a transaction log so they aren't lost. But when you restart the server, it has to do the work. It has to replay all those sticky notes and apply them to the data pages before it can let users back in.
so my restart time isn't just boot the OS, it's process the backlog.
I've seen production databases that normally restart in a minute, take 45 minutes to come back online because the change buffer was full.
45 minutes of downtime, that is a resume-generating event.
It is. You traded write speed during the day for a massive penalty during recovery.
There's also a weird performance quirk mentioned here called read after write latency.
Yes. Remember, the data on disk is old. If you insert a row and then immediately try to read it back using that secondary index, the database can't just read the disk. It has to check the sticky notes, it has to fetch the page, apply the pending changes, and then give you the answer.
So I get fast writes, but my first read might be slow.
Exactly. You're paying the interest on the debt.
This feels like something we need to configure carefully. It's not just a turn it on and forget it feature.
No, it's not. It's like tuning a factory line. You have
Yeah.
to know what you're making. Are you write heavy or read heavy?
There's a setting for this. InnoDB change buffering.
That's the knob. By default, it buffers almost everything. But let's say you have a system that is 95% reads. Or maybe your database is small enough that it all fits in RAM anyway.
In that case, all my index pages are already on the desk. They're hot.
Right. If the page is in memory, the change buffer does nothing. It only works for pages not in memory. So if you allocate RAM to the change buffer, you're just wasting space that could be used for caching actual data. In that case, you should turn it off. Set it to none.
But if I'm write heavy, like an IoT ingestion platform,
Then you want it on. You might even set it to inserts to prioritize new data. But I have to give a warning here to the mid-level engineers listening.
don't touch it.
Don't touch it unless you have proof. This is the trap of premature optimization. Do not change in InnoDB change buffering just because you heard this deep dive. You only tune this if your monitoring shows that disk I/O is your bottleneck.
And consistency matters too. I can imagine a nightmare where staging has buffering off and production has it on.
That is configuration drift.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. Staging works fine because the load is low. Production falls over because the buffering behavior changes the timing of everything. It worked on my machine is not a valid defense during a post-mortem.
This has been a massive reality check. We started with the database as a black box, and we've ended up discussing memory latches, disk seeks, and the physics of moving data.
That is really the definition of senior engineering. It isn't about knowing the syntax for a giant. It's about understanding the cost of the hardware underneath.
Let's summarize the big picture here. The buffer pool is about optimizing memory speed. The change buffer is about optimizing disk I/O, and indexes are about optimizing read speed at the direct expense of write speed.
It's all a trade-off. There's no perfect configuration, only the right configuration for your specific workload. And the cool thing is, these patterns batching, caching, sequential versus random, they are everywhere.
Right. I was thinking about Kafka while you were talking.
Kafka is entirely built around sequential I/O.
Hmm.
Redis is entirely built around the buffer pool concept. Spark uses these same principles. Once you see the physics, you see them in every system.
I want to leave the listeners with that final thought you had in the notes, the one about ACID compliance.
Yes. We always talk about databases being acidatomic, consistent, isolated, durable. We think of them as these rigid sources of truth. But look at the change buffer.
It's cheating.
It sacrifices immediate consistency on the disk for performance. It says the data is safe in memory, but the disk is technically out of date until I flush it.
So deep down inside the engine.
Inside the engine, it is essentially an eventual consistency system wrapped in an ACID shell. It lives in the tension between the ideal of perfect data and the brutal reality of hardware limitations. If you can understand that tension, you can design anything.
That is a lot to process. I am definitely going to be picturing those sticky notes the next time I write a query. Thanks for diving deep with us.
My pleasure. Always look under the hood.
See you on the next deep dive.